Yo, what is up guys? Delboy here, aka Blue Collar Sports TV. Hopefully you guys are doing well. If you're new here, smash that like, hit subscribe, all of that good stuff. So this video is a quick preview and prediction for Canelo Alvarez versus Caleb Plant. This fight goes down on the 6th of November, and of course this fight is for undisputed at super middleweight. The winner of this fight will be the man at 168. Having said that, despite both guys being champions, Canelo Alvarez is a resounding favourite going into this bout, and I agree with that quite frankly. But nevertheless, let's briefly break down the tale of the tape, and after I've done that, I will, say what I believe each guy should do to win, and make my official prediction at the end of the video. So yeah, let's get into the tale of the tape, and we shall start with Canelo Alvarez. He has a record of 56 wins, 1 defeat, 2 draws, 38 of his 56 wins coming by way of knockout. Caleb Plant has a perfect record of 21-0, 12 of his 21 wins coming by way of knockout. So right off the bat, you can see that Canelo Alvarez has a huge experience advantage going into this fight. He's fought across multiple divisions, fought much better competition than Caleb Plant, and ultimately he's nearly had 3 times the amount of fights as Caleb Plant. So Canelo Alvarez is much more experienced going into this bout. Canelo Alvarez is listed as 5'8" with a 70.5-inch reach, whereas Caleb Plant is listed as 6'1" with a 74-inch reach. So Caleb Plant does have a considerable 5-inch height advantage and also a 3.5-inch reach advantage. And ultimately, let's be honest, if Caleb Plant has any chance in this fight, he needs to utilise that height and reach advantage in this particular bout. Canelo Alvarez is an orthodox fighter, as is Caleb Plant. Canelo Alvarez is 31 years old and Caleb Plant is 29 years old. And that was the tale of the tape. But what should each guy do to win this fight? I think I should start with Caleb Plant being the massive underdog. To me, Caleb Plant in this fight has to move his feet like he hasn't done in his previous fights. Caleb Plant can move okay, but the problem with Caleb Plant in his career so far, he does take a lot of, I guess you would say, breaks, where he'll be moving for a bit, and then all of a sudden he'll kind of fight in a flat-footed stance out of that Philly shell, and he invites on pressure onto himself. We saw that in the late rounds against Porky Medina, Jose Uzcategui, and even against Caleb Truax to a lesser extent. He'll hold his feet at times, and he'll just randomly invite pressure on himself, and sometimes he'll do the same when he sits on the ropes. As far as I'm concerned, he needs to cut that right out in this fight. If you go back and watch the Caleb Truax fight, every time Caleb Plant made himself available and Caleb Truax threw the overhand right, it basically landed every single time. So for me in this fight, Caleb Plant really needs to cut that out. He needs to purely fight this fight on the back foot. Don't hold your feet with Canelo, don't exchange, because Caleb Plant will come up second best. Caleb Plant has the reputation of being a defensive fighter, but when he exchanges with people, he does get caught, and in my opinion, his defensive reactions when he's flat-footed are not great. When he sits on the ropes, he can't roll shots very well, he's open for the left hook to body and head, and he's open for the overhand right, as I mentioned against Caleb Truax. Ultimately, if I take it a step further, I would say that Caleb Plant needs to ditch his shoulder roll defense in this fight, because as far as I'm concerned, Caleb Plant does that shoulder roll in a cheap imitation fashion of Floyd Mayweather or James Toney, etc. To me, he doesn't do it very well. To me, Caleb Plant's reactions are too slow to really carry out that style effectively. Yeah, he can pull it off against the likes of Uzcategui, Vincent Feigenboots, Caleb Truax. Yeah, it works against those sort of guys, but even those guys were able to find the target very easily when Plant was fighting out of that shoulder roll, particularly when he was flat-footed. So for me in this fight, Caleb needs to ditch the shoulder roll and fight in a stance which is more conducive of being able to move around constantly. So Caleb's legs in this fight need to be a lot more active than I've seen them previously. And obviously fighting in that style, you still need to get your own work done. Caleb needs to constantly fire that jab while he's fighting off a back foot, but not only fire the jab, he needs to really change levels with the jab. Jab to the head, jab to the chest, jab to the solar plexus. Keep Canelo Alvarez guessing and keep him frustrated. Canelo does block jabs to the head very well. He covers up quite nicely. He can also slip the jab quite effectively, which could lead for a counterpunch for Canelo. So Caleb really needs to be changing his looks when it comes to throwing that jab. Like I said, jab to the head, jab to the chest, jab to the body, jab from your waist, jab from a high guard, feint the jab, maybe feint the jab and then surprise Canelo with the lead straight right hand. For me, Caleb Plant needs to keep his fight long and he needs to keep his punches straight. He can't afford to be throwing a lot of crooked arm shots or wide shots, because if he does that, theoretically he's in Canelo Alvarez's wheelhouse, and Canelo, for my money, has quicker hands. He's a better counter-puncher. He throws better combinations. So if Caleb Plant opens up with wide or crooked arm shots, Canelo more than likely will piece this guy up. So Caleb Plant needs to avoid that as much as possible. Of course, there's going to be occasions when Caleb Plant does need to fight fire with fire, but he needs to minimise those moments in this fight. It's up to Caleb Plant in this one to dictate the real estate where the fight's being fought at. He needs to go and watch the Sergey Kovalev fight, believe it or not. Now, Sergey Kovalev performed extremely poorly in that fight, as far as I'm concerned, but he had a lot of success just throwing the jab, backing up, a light jab, keeping range, and he won numerous rounds against Canelo Alvarez doing that. So I think despite Kovalev absolutely sucking in that fight, I felt he showed a few things that can trouble Canelo, and I think Caleb really needs to look at that fight and build upon that. Show more variety with the jab, like I said, more movement, avoid the ropes, things like that. Caleb needs to be an outboxer in this fight. Anything else and he will lose, as far as I'm concerned. And quite frankly, given what I've seen of Caleb Plant so far in his career, I'm not even sure he's got the stamina to box effectively on the back foot for 12 rounds. He may be able to do it for a few rounds, but I have seen him gas on a couple of fights previously late on, so again, Caleb Plant's stamina in this fight does need to be a lot better for him to carry out that sort of style. And for me, that's how Caleb Plant wins this fight. He's not going to trade with Canelo and knock him out. He's not going to walk Canelo onto a hard counter that knocks him out. He's not going to outfight Canelo. Caleb Plant's only real chance is to take advantage of his height and reach advantage and go from there. And quite frankly, even then, I can't see it being enough, if I'm being honest. As for Canelo Alvarez, I think the key for him in this fight is to target the body of Caleb Plant. Like I said previously, I'm not too convinced by Caleb Plant's gas tank in a tough fight. We saw him flagging in the Uskatigi fight, the Porky Medina fight, and if Canelo Alvarez can target that body successfully early on and slowly start to chip away, I think you'll see Caleb Plant's gas tank very quickly deplete as the rounds go on. So the bodywork of Canelo in this fight is going to be very important. He needs to take advantage of the moments when Caleb Plant is flat-footed, fighting out of that Philly shell, whether it be when Plant is on the ropes or even in the centre of a ring. The body shots will definitely be there for Canelo in those moments. He just needs to take them. And also, when Caleb is standing his own ground and trying to fire back, the overhand right again is a key shot for Canelo Alvarez. The counter overhand right. Caleb Plant, he throws his jab usually from the waist, and it can be a snappy jab, but at times it is rather predictable and easy to counter. If Caleb Truax can counter that shot, I'm sure Canelo can. So, get a read on the jab of Caleb Plant, get a read on when he's going to throw it, and when he does throw it, slip it. And as Caleb Plant is bringing his jab hand back down to his waist, then counter with the overhand right. Because usually when Caleb is throwing his shots, he's actually throwing in a flat-footed stance. So as he's bringing that hand back down to his waist, he's kind of flat-footed, his chin is open, go for the overhand right. And that's why I say in this fight, Caleb really needs to box off a back foot and punch on the move. But I've never seen Caleb Plant punch on the move consistently in a fight. There's numerous times when he'll stand flat-footed and try and land snappy shots kind of thing. So that's going to present Canelo Alvarez with many counterpunch opportunities. And ultimately, Canelo in this fight, he's going to be the aggressor, naturally. Stylistically, he's the more naturally aggressive guy. He's going to be walking down Caleb Plant behind the high guard. He'll slip the straight punches, and he just needs to apply constant pressure on Caleb Plant. Now, while Canelo Alvarez isn't quick when it comes to cutting off a ring, he's definitely got a lot better at it. He does apply good mental pressure while walking you down. He won't give you much of a target as he's doing that. He'll take slight steps to his left or right, depending on where you are in the ring, to try and close the angles and close the escape routes. And Canelo needs to apply that steady pressure in this fight, because I believe Caleb Plant is a guy who eventually will lose his shape if he's subjected to that methodical pressure. So obviously Canelo needs to cut the ring off in this fight, and I think a good shot for Canelo, I go back to the body work, is the wide left hook of Canelo Alvarez, the wide left hook to the body. And Canelo does throw a really good wide left hook to the body, where he's got his full arm almost extended and throwing it in a hook-like fashion. One thing about Caleb Plant, one of his escape routes is when he exits to the left, he'll throw the jab, he'll turn his body, and then he'll move to the left. But he really gives up that left side of the body. So Canelo's wide left hook in that scenario, it is a great shot. It stops Caleb Plant from being able to escape, and obviously it grinds down on Caleb's body. I think that's a great shot for Canelo to really effectively pressure Caleb Plant. So I would look out for the wide left hook to the body of Canelo Alvarez. But ultimately, this fight, I mean, when it comes to Canelo, he's just got to do his thing. It's Canelo's fight to lose. He's the more experienced man. He's the far more versatile fighter, far more skilled, offensively much better, even defensively much better than Caleb Plant. There's not much Caleb Plant does better than Canelo Alvarez. So it's Canelo Alvarez's fight to lose. And honestly, I don't really give Caleb Plant a prayer in this fight, quite frankly. I think Canelo Alvarez will win this fight relatively comfortably. He might have a few moments early on when Caleb Plant is fresh and when he's moving, but as this fight goes on, I think Canelo Alvarez will slowly chop away at Caleb Plant, work the body, land some snappy counter punches, and then grind down Caleb Plant for a mid to late stoppage. I would say the stoppage will occur in rounds 7 to 9, maybe, something like that. But ultimately, I expect Canelo to win this fight, and I expect him to win this fight well, quite frankly. And I believe Canelo Alvarez will be the undisputed champion at 168 pounds. But what about you guys? Do you guys give Caleb Plant much of a chance? Or like me, do you expect Canelo Alvarez to win this fight in decisive fashion? I've seen a lot of people comment on Caleb Plant's energy going into this fight. He seems like he really wants to win. He does seem ambitious. He's saying the right things, but I honestly believe that will all go out the window as this fight plays out, as he's getting caught to the body, as he's being caught with hard shots. I think Caleb Plant will basically submit in this fight. I wouldn't even be surprised if Caleb takes a knee or his corner pulls him out, something like that. But I definitely predict Canelo to stop Caleb Plant in the mid to late rounds. Anyway, share your thoughts below. It's been your guy Delboy. Peace.